This Throwback Thursday episode arrives as final votes are being counted in the 2022 elections in the United States. It's a full circle moment to revisit this powerful conversation from 2017 with community activist, TedX speaker, author of the book Black, Brown, and Political, Get Informed, Get Empowered, and Change the Game, and founder of the Powerhouse Academy, Chandra Brooks. In this conversation those 5 years ago, Chandra inspired me to get back out and canvass in support of a local candidate, Noelia Corzo, during her first run for school board in my community. Last night, my son Jacob and I, who had volunteered together, celebrated with Noelia and her supporters as she received the initial promising results for her run as County Supervisor. If the votes continue in her favor, Noelia will be the first Latina woman supervisor in our county. I'm honored to reshare this episode and acknowledge all the activists like Chandra and candidates like Noelia who have the courage and commitment to step into the arena, to sit at the table and own their power. Now, onto the show. Hi, and welcome to Mother's Quest, a podcast for moms like me ready to live our own truly epic life. I'm Julie Neal, a life and leadership coach, community builder, writer, and mom to two high-energy boys who challenge me to grow into my best self. I'll be right there. Where was I? Hello, and welcome to the Mother's Quest podcast. I'm honored to share this episode number 32 with Chandra Brooks, who's become a friend and a generous thought partner for me in recent months. Chandra is a wife, mother of four, author, entrepreneur, and the Northern California staff director for SEIU-United Service Workers West. Born and raised in San Jose, California, her passion is community, civil rights, social justice, and improving voter outcomes and civic engagement in communities of color. She's also an appointed commissioner for Santa Clara County's Commission on the Status of Women and Girls and chair of the Justice and Advocacy Committee and elected delegate for the California Democratic Party. In 2017, Chandra launched The Socialpreneur, a purpose-driven business that prepares potential candidates to get ready to run for political office and mentors women to own their power and leadership within their company, business, and community. I reached out to Chandra because I wanted to talk with her in the week that she released her new book, Black, Brown, and Political, Get Informed, Get Empowered, and Change the Game, which provides easy to navigate tips and inspiration to help women of color get involved in local politics. Before I share more about this episode, I want to introduce Titilayo Tinubu Ali with this week's dedication.
Hi, it's Titilayo Tinubu Ali, and it is my pleasure to dedicate this podcast episode to my mother, Dr. Gloria Bromell Tinubu. So my mother was actually born on her mother's birthday on the grounds of Brickgreen Gardens in Georgetown, South Carolina, where my grandmother worked as a maid. Both of my grandparents had less than an elementary school education, but they were determined to see their children get the education and opportunities that they never had. So my mom worked really hard to make their dreams come true. She started by graduating second in her high school class. Then she went off to college at Howard University in D.C. and majored in fine arts. While she was there, my grandfather gave her a sewing machine, a bike, and really their love, and sent her off to the big city. And they would send her care packages and homemade biscuits and Vienna sausages to sustain her. And it turns out that, that's all she really needed. She graduated from Howard, and then she knew that in order to lift her family up and to really help South Carolina families rise up out of persistent poverty, that somebody in their community needed to know something about economics. So my mom then went to graduate school, and she became the first African-American woman to earn a master's degree in agricultural and economics from Clemson University. She later then became the first African American male or female to receive a PhD in applied economics from Clemson. Because she was a rock star, my mom would then go on to get married in grad school, and she and my dad had 3 of the 4 of us while they were in grad school. And in fact, she defended her dissertation and then the next day went into labor with my younger brother. So how's that for mother magic? After grad school, they relocated to Atlanta, and that's really where my mom got incredibly involved in state and local politics. My mom would then go on to hold office as a member of the Atlanta City Council, as a member of the Georgia State Board of Education, and as a member of the Georgia General Assembly. But she didn't stop there. She made history again in 2012 by becoming the first African American woman in South Carolina of any party to win her party's nomination for Congress. So I could go on and on about her numerous professional accomplishments as a professor, community leader, public servant, but all of these things really pale in comparison to how great of a mother she is, both literally to me and my 3 brothers, a grandmother to my twin boys and my nephews, but she's also figuratively a mother and a nurturer to members of her community who themselves have gone on to seek public office because they were inspired by her through working on her campaigns and seeing her example. She's truly been a gift to so many people. She started off being a gift to her own mother on her mother's birthday, and she's truly been a gift to me, to my family members, our extended family, and so many members of the community. I love you, Mom.
I loved every moment of this dedication. I was so inspired by Titilayo's mother's fierce pursuit of education, leadership in politics, mentorship of other women, and mother magic. These are all things reflected in Chandra Brooks's epic life. In this episode, we got to dive deep into the influences which drove Chandra to own her voice and reach her fullest potential. She shares how her mother led her by example to stand up for herself as a woman at a young age, how her uncle unknowingly nudged her to strive for greatness after doubting her future when she became pregnant as a teenager, and how her own ambition, value for education, and commitment to political leadership helps her inspire generations, from her 12-year-old son to the women she mentors, to sit at the table and own their power. I didn't realize when I scheduled the interview with Chandra that we would be talking the day before the November elections. The conversation couldn't come at a better time, and her challenge to me inspired me to go out and do another round of precinct walking with my 5-year-old that afternoon. It was thrilling to wake up the next day to news that so many women of color, including one woman my son and I had supported the day before, had been elected. Chandra, with her new book as a resource, is a powerful force to fuel this growing movement of women stepping into more leadership. I hope this conversation will inspire you, as it has me, to be part of this movement and to more fully own our power to make a difference. I'm Julie Neal, and this is Mother's Quest. Chandra, welcome to the Mother's Quest podcast. We've had you as a feature on our blog in the past, and I've always wanted the chance to be able to be in conversation with you and share it with my community. So I'm grateful for this time with you today.
Thank you, Julie. I really appreciate it. You know, I follow your work and everything you're trying to do, and I admire it. And I'm so grateful for you for being an ally in the community and supporting the activism and the work that several people are doing, and you supporting it and giving it a highlight. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, you have absolutely been a very supportive thought partner for me in that process of moving into more activism and beginning to have conversations about race. And I think you really were the first person who I reached out to when I had this idea for the Women Podcasters in Solidarity initiative, and you helped me frame the name for it. So just very grateful for our connection. I want to say one thing before I ask my first question of you. You know, often when my guests get scheduled or it comes together, I have a very specific thing in mind. And sometimes I schedule it and I don't even know or realize what the reason is. I just sort of trust. And I think it's amazing to me. Actually, do you know, I wanted to create some space for you to talk about your book, which is
Mm-hmm.
launching. But I didn't really put together the fact that tomorrow is voting day and how getting people to vote and to run for office and to be on commissions and be civically engaged is central to you and your mission. So I feel like the timing of this conversation is really perfect.
Yeah, and it was intentional on why I launched it on November 8th. And I don't know if I was thinking that our elections were on November 8th last year, and I had the 2 days mixed up, to be completely transparent. I think I did. And my intention was to launch it on the election day, a year after election day. I'm close enough, I guess. But it was kind of a reminder to people that, like, this is what happened a year ago.
Yeah.
This is what happened a year ago. We need to wake up and we need to do something about it. And this is how you can do something about it. So it's very intentional that I had the book launch on that date.
So perfect. Let's get right to it. The first question I like to ask is, tell me a little bit about your childhood, the impact that your own mother had in shaping who you are today, and what you're most on a quest for, how those seeds of your childhood have led you to where you are now.
Yeah, you don't think about that until Julie asked that question. I really don't think about like why I'm doing what I'm doing and if that has to do with my mom or just how I was raised. And, when I looked at the information you sent me about the interview, and I was thinking, I was actually writing, how my mom influenced me just to be a strong, independent woman and to be opinionated. Because I remember I was very opinionated when I was young. I always had something to say when it came to saying my father telling me to get up to make a plate for my brother. And I was like, he has 2 feet and 2 hands just like me. He can get up and make his own plate of food. And I was saying this like at 7 and 8 years old. And I was the only one that would challenge that. And I would challenge the men in my family constantly on those type of, gender just things, issues that would come about, and I would, say something about it. And my mom was very voiceful. And, now thinking about it, I remember my mom used to challenge my father-in-law, her father-in-law, my grandfather, and do the same thing and would speak up when other sister-in-laws wouldn't speak up. And she would always be the one saying something and get angry and bust out the door. And, I had to think deeply about that. And honestly, Julie, I never really thought about that. Seeing her doing that was a resistance, right? She was not going to just fall into that. Yes, I am the subservient wife that's going to serve you and, cater to you and do what you guys say I'm supposed to do. I'm not going to do that. So she would challenge that. And I think that that's where I got that from, that it's okay and you're going to be fine. And you need to say something because it's not right. So I think that I'm pretty sure that that's where that came from. But also, thinking about it, growing up as a teenager, I've had many women in my life that have been impactful, not only in my mom in that way, and she's always a hard worker and always was a great mom. But then I had, friends, boyfriends, moms that I was very close to, and seeing different cultures and being involved in all these different cultures that really gave me an identity and gave me who I was. So I'm grateful because I've learned from many mothers. My mother, I've learned from no nonsense Black mothers that, were no nonsense and taught me how to, use my voice, taught me how to be strong and get through certain situations that normally I'd probably crumble, but gave me a strength by watching them and seeing their resilience and going through certain issues that taught me how to be stronger than I thought I really was.
I love that because in Mother's Quest, I talk a lot about the power that we have in helping our children grow in the ways that we want them to through our own example. So I love hearing and imagining your mom using her voice and how you were able to model that, but also the other women in your community that were mothering you and showing you the way too. What would you say you're currently on a quest for now?
I'm on a quest to educate the world, honestly, on how much power we have as individuals and how, we can really make that change that we want to see if we all took action, if we all understood the places and the opportunities that are there for us to have a voice and to be at the decision-making tables, and that we all have that ability to be on these decision-making tables and how they can do it. So that's my quest, is to teach, even though it's not a popular topic, it's very unpopular. I mean, it's popular right now in the big news media. And I think at a national level, when it comes to Trump and, everything going on at a national level, but locally, people, it's just not popular. It's just not sexy, right? And I think that that's what I've been doing the last 8 days, is educating, trying to make politics sexy in a way where people see movies and individuals and music and it's sexy to them. And I want to make it something that is interesting and intriguing to people and empowering. So that's kind of my quest right now, is to educate the masses in owning their power and understanding that, giving them tools on how to really, really take action now.
That's so powerful. And I look forward to going a little deeper on that when we get to the EPIC guideposts, where we're headed next.
Okay.
But before we move to the guideposts, I'm curious, sometimes I talk about like an epic snapshot moment, those moments in our life when time slows down and you realize that you're presently experiencing everything that you really stand for, everything that you strive for. I'm curious if there's one example on your quest to help people and yourself take action. What's one time where you felt like it was really, you were just completely hitting the target?
There's been a few, but actually, I think just recently, that has happened, because I've had this passion for a long time, and I've actually did a workshop about 3 or 4 years ago called Sit at the Table or Be on the Menu. So this has been something that I've been passionate about, but I haven't really just went full-fledged into it on how I could really educate the masses and not just my small little community here in San Jose, or the people that were following me that would come to my workshop. How could I do it at a bigger level? And I think that this is, something just recently, with my book, being able to say, I think I'm onto something, and the interest that people are showing in it around the country, that it's something that it's like an aha moment to people. And even though, I feel locally, I think because my audience and on my own social media is not, they're all politicals that are into this already. So it's kind of common sense to them. So that's not my audience. My audience is the non-political people. And that's exactly who I'm trying to touch. I'm trying to touch those people that knew nothing about it, really didn't care about it at all, and really attract those people. So I could care less about having the support of any politicians or any people that are, part of the local Democratic Party or local Republican Party or any of these Democratic clubs, political clubs. I want those people those young people that know nothing about it, that I'm empowering. So I think that this is where I feel like I'm onto something, because this is the non-political people that are my target audience. So really trying to find those people and get this education to them. So that time has been just now and recently.
Yeah, how exciting. Well, I know you've been following Mother's Quest, and you know that the hero or heroine's journey has been a really strong metaphor for me in terms of, realizing that we're the author of our story and paying attention to those callings and not quieting them. And I really resonate with what you were just explaining about, like, there was this work that was coming up for you, and it wasn't that you weren't doing it at all, but it came into much sharper focus, and you focused on the path in a different way.
Right.
So I want to dive into this idea of living an epic life, which connotes, living your heroine's journey. And also, EPIC is an acronym mnemonic for the guideposts that I think help us live that life when we're raising our children, which we both are doing right now. So the first guidepost, E, stands for engaged, and that's about being engaged mindfully with our children. Tell me a little bit about the children in your life and how you engage mindfully with them.
Well, I have 4 children, 2 stepchildren and 2 that are my own, but I really claim them all and I've raised them all, from 25 to 12.
Wow.
And I have one grandson. So what I really try to do is make sure that I'm a great example for them and that they're paying attention. And then when I find out they're paying attention, it's just awesome that, I figure that out. They are paying attention. They are getting this and they're understanding. And so talking to them about this stuff and not just, I think sometimes as our parents, what I noticed with my parents is they were so busy. You didn't know really if they were intentionally sitting down and trying to teach you a lesson. And, even though I was learning from them and I didn't even realize at the time that I'm learning from them. But although I know my kids are learning from my actions, sitting down and intentionally showing them things, like I have these Black history flashcards from my son and really teaching him about history and understanding where it comes from and the greatness that he comes from and really feeling pride in that. But also understanding the power that we have as people and the activism work and the work that I'm doing, understanding what mom really does and how important it is. And I really need you as my son to feel the same way and to, model that in your schools and be the person that I'm trying to raise. So sitting down and having these conversations with him. And as he's my youngest, he's the only one still in the house. I really try to intentionally do that with him constantly. And I get the reassurance that this is working when I hear stories, when I sit down with teachers and they tell me, I was talking to Kasaya and I was asking him, what are you going to be when you grow up? And everybody's saying doctor, lawyer, teacher. And Kasaya says entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
He says entrepreneur. And I'm going, because I want to be my own boss and I want to create, exactly what I want to create. And, he's saying these things. And then also when she talks about, well, how can you make change in your community? And he says protest. He's giving these ideas and the teachers are loving it. And they're just like, where does he get this from? Because he's the only one saying this stuff. So when I get confirmation that I'm intentionally raising my son and he's getting what I'm saying and doing.
I really appreciate that you're doing both and that you're mindful about both, that you're realizing that there are things that he's seeing and experiencing and learning from you all the time. And that you're also setting aside time really intentionally to share something with him. I love that. Well, let's move to the next guidepost, which is P. It stands for passionate and purposeful. And this is about the work that you're doing in the world beyond your family. You started to tell us a little bit about that, but why don't you share more about your book and your own purpose-driven venture and what you see ahead for how you want to make an impact?
So the book is called Black, Brown, and Political, and it's about, helping or engaging and educating the communities of color on how to get informed, get empowered, and change the game of politics and activism and civic engagement, all these things, and understand where, how they can do it. Because to me, I feel like people don't know what they don't know. We don't know that we're supposed to even know this. They didn't teach us in school. We didn't learn from our parents. We didn't hear it on television, on radio. It's not engraved in our brain to really get involved and know, understand the power that we really have if we did. So I wanted to create a short, very, clear-cut book that gave basic tools and information to get people not only maybe a little angry, but a little empowered to say, oh, okay, this is how it's done. It's that easy. Oh, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to do something. And because to me, something is better than nothing. And I felt most of us were not doing something. A lot of people tell me, I'm not into politics, Chandra. This is just not my thing, and I don't like it. And I'm like, well, you should, and you need to be, because you're angry about X, Y, and Z going on, but you're not doing anything about it. And they're like, well, what is me coming out to a protest or action going to do? And, I tell them, if you partner that with some real advocacy and action, things can really change. But also you have to have the numbers as well and more people to do it with you. But, really educating them on this stuff is something that I'm very passionate about. And empowering is so powerful to me. It's like when I teach people this, and I think I got it when I did my first workshop on sit at the table or be on the menu. And when I really taught people how to sit on commissions, even though it seemed like a very small little thing, they didn't even know what a commission was. They didn't know what a commission could do. They didn't know the power that a commission had. And so once they figured out, oh, you don't have to have all these credentials to sit on a commission. You could just be a regular community member, constituent that wants to be involved, and you could get appointed. Yes, you can. And once they figured that out and I seen the empowerment that I gave people, that's where it really kind of, drove me to write this book. Or I already had this vision in here for a long time, but to really write a book and really start getting the message out using social media and using the internet to really put that message out there to make people understand. So that's kind of where that passion came from, and understand that I didn't get tired of this. This wasn't something that I really get drained from doing. I love talking about it every day. So I feel that this is my purpose, because it's something that's always inside of me, and I could talk about this forever. And usually when it's something that you can talk about forever and for free, that's usually your purpose.
You're on the right path.
Exactly.
I'd love to hear, I know that you're currently on the Santa Clara Commission on the Status of Women and Girls.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to hear an example of the advocacy work that you're doing there and a change that you've been able to affect by being on the commission.
So just recently, we did a tour of the women's side of the jail. And these are two things that happened. And this is just recently, even though I do have a long list of things over the 4 years that we've been able to advocate for. This one, I don't know why it stands out even more, maybe because it's more recent. But we did a tour of the Elmwood facility in Milpitas, California. And this was the first time I've had the opportunity, because I missed it the last time, to do the full tour of the full facility. Every month we just go to the women's side and we talk with the women. But this time, and this was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was able to do the tour. Probably it's actually longer. It's like 4 or 5 weeks ago. I did the full tour. And, what we got to see is what all the men had on their side. The men had all these vocational training programs. They were able to do upholstery. They were able to make like plaques and, stuff, woodwork and auto body. So they had all these trades that they were able to do. And then you go on the women's side, and the women have embroidery. And then their embroidery machine that they were using has been broke for a whole year. And so, I questioned that, and I was like, what's going on? What's going on with this embroidery machine? And I don't even like the embroidery idea anyway, because I think it's old, and I don't even understand what kind of job they're going to get when they come out of that jail, what kind of job they're going to be able to leverage with that skill, other than working at an embroidery shop that you never see anywhere anymore. So I have a real issue with that, and I've already spoken about that to them. But that's the only program that they have for them to learn a skill, a vocational skill, and it's been broken for the last year. So what are you guys doing? So, right away, I, made sure that we got a meeting with the captain and the lieutenant that oversees the side of the women's jail, and she didn't even know. So this is what happens when you go and advocate and bring it back to their attention, and they remember that they had HIPAA issues with this machine or something, but it got stalled during this whole year to get fixed. But also, okay, that got fixed, but also addressing why aren't the women able to come and participate in these vocational programs like the men? Yeah. And they were like, well, we don't like to commingle. And okay, well, then you rotate days, right? You rotate days. There's always simple solutions to really get this done. So then when you call them out on it, right, and you do it, this is how change happens. And they're putting in the works to make this happen, to make sure the women have the opportunity to be in these vocational programs that the men do. And the men are able to go in and get these jobs, and women are kind of stuck and without a skill when they come out of jail and they go back to living a life of crime like they did before. So it's very important, and I'm really interested in seeing the statistics, coming out, the recidivism, if it affects it, by them being able to have a skill when they come out and really have these certificates to really maybe find a job that will help them and that'll benefit them and keep them out of jail. We need to fix this, and how can we get this fixed? And then how can we support as the commission? Because we still have to go take this to the Board of Supervisors and say, okay, this is what we've seen. Now we need to allocate some funding to make this happen. So it's steps and processes, to first call it out, but also to make sure there's resources in order to make it happen at the same time, because they have to change a whole lot of scheduling, structures, staffing. all this comes into play, but that's what we're here for. I want to carry it out to the end. So that's something we're working on right now. And then, the library issues, the men's library is beautiful, beautiful library. Everything's organized, labeled. They have beautiful books and tables, and it's just a beautiful environment. And you go to the women's library, and it's like a storage unit with books that are from the 80s. They're
Wow.
old, yellow, beat up books. And it's like a junky room. And so, people have been trying to get in there to clean it. And they were saying, oh, you guys can't come in from the outside and do it. I finally sat down with the lieutenant and the captain, and I said, when can we make this happen? Because I've been trying to do it for like a year now, and it hasn't happened. And they said, oh, well, you guys could come in. What's the issue? You guys can use our cleaning supplies. You don't have to bring outside cleaning supplies. So it's just like a misunderstanding, a miscommunication why it didn't happen a year ago. And now it's happening. So we're able to bring in fresh books, clean books for them to read, and for them to have a nice library like the men do. So this stuff wouldn't change unless we were commissioners and we weren't using our voice and using our power to really change things.
I'm also curious to hear, if you've had a chance to get to know some of these women and their stories, what an example would be of somebody who found themselves there, and why having access to education and vocational training could make such a impactful difference.
A lot of these women have just grew up in a crime family, in a family of gangs, and that's all they knew. All they knew was, gang banging, shootings, drive-by shootings, repping your gang is your family. This is just, their parents were gang members, right? Mm-hmm. And this is their daily life. This is all they knew, is a life of crime. And their brothers were committing crimes, their sisters were committing crimes, so they're committing. It's like natural to them. It's like everyday life. It's just what we do. And so they don't know anything different. So once they come into a place, and even though it's jail, they're offered an opportunity to see something different. Oh, I could make money doing this, and I like it, and it's fun, and it's interesting. I'd rather do this than continue to live a life of crime and get myself back here, because being here is miserable. So once they realize that, and they know there's more to life than just living a life of crime, because that's all they know. You'd be surprised, people haven't been outside of their neighborhoods. They haven't traveled to Modesto. They haven't traveled to Monterey, San Francisco, Oakland. They haven't been out of their vicinity in their hood. So they don't know anything different other than what they see on TV. So when they have a tangible opportunity to do something different, most of them jump on it. So most of them want to change, especially if they're motivated and empowered to do it.
I mean, of course, I think what you're describing in terms of creating an opportunity for these people who are in jail is important. And I feel like if we did a better job as a society to provide resources, equitable access to education, and all of these things earlier, these women wouldn't find themselves in that position. One of the things that I've been learning more about is just, where we as a society are allocating our resources. I'd love to hear, so the I in EPIC stands for investing in ourselves. I'd like to start with, in the communities that you're working in, where are the places where we could be making investments, even with young people, so that this sense of opportunity and education and exposure to things are happening sooner? Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts about that? And then I'd like to hear a little bit about the ways in which you invest in yourself and how you have been able to come to this place where you are, living such a full and impactful life.
Yeah, I think that what we can do as a society is really understand these communities a little bit more and get to know them a little bit more and go into them and really understand them and talk to people, but also putting programs within the schools that need it. So putting programs or bringing people that look like them, that are successful, that are doing other things other than what they know. So, bringing in successful entrepreneurs, bringing in doctors, bringing in, lawyers and people that are doing amazing things and showing them that they can, and people like you are doing it too. And people that have grown up in a similar situation look like you can do it as well. And you can do it as well, but also them seeing images and teachers that look like them And I've seen this in schools where, they have teachers that look like them, and then they lose them very quickly because these teachers teach differently. They're not just, they're not the cookie cutter type of teacher. And, I've had to advocate for some teachers that, especially Black male teachers, that they were being very effective, but because they, would come across differently to parents, and parents weren't used to them, they would be discriminated against, or they would be judged by the way they either talked, and were intimidating to some people because they might have spoken up a little strong and had some authority, and to them it was intimidating. And then they said they were intimidating the parents by the way they talked to them, but they were actually just talking in a normal tone. But because of their skin tone and because of their demeanor and confidence, it came across as arrogant and kind of aggressive when it was nothing of that nature. So, seeing that and being able to, making sure that we keep those type of teachers in the schools for our kids so they have somebody to look up to. I think that's one way, but also, looking at your school boards, within your own community, and making sure that the school boards are reflective of those communities. And if they are not, what can you do to make sure you find candidates, local candidates of color, or that look like the community that they're serving, that are sitting on that board and that are looking out for that community? And you have to find those people, like in neighborhood associations, local grassroots activists that you can put there, but you have to go and grab them and say, hey, you should run for school board because we need your voice there. So really being proactive and grabbing young leaders that might not even know what they can do. They have a voice, they have a strong voice, but they don't even know that they can go run for school board, and we need them there. So really being proactive and finding young leaders. And if you can use your position and your power within your own community to make sure that we have an equitable school board and that it's a reflection of that community that's needed, then use that. Yeah. Use your voice and use your power to make those type of things happen.
So great. And tell me a bit about your own personal learnings around investing in yourself. Where were the moments and the places where you made choices that you think were critical to where you are now?
Ooh. I think that, critical time was when I became a teen mom, and I knew that I had to do something more. It wasn't just about me, and that I had to help other women and other young women that maybe are living in the same type of environment, and understand that, you need to focus on your education. So I think at that time when I became a mother and a young mom, I wanted to really go into action right away and help other young moms figure out that that's not the end of the world, because my uncle told me that. When I first told my parents I was pregnant, he said, well, you might as well just give up now because you're going to be on welfare and you're just going to continue to have more babies and you're not going to amount to nothing. So he said that to me, and that's always stuck with me forever. It has stuck with me because, I was going to prove him wrong. I knew he was wrong when he said that. I was just like, that's ridiculous. How could you even think that? But that's really what he thought. And he has empowered me to continue to strive for greatness constantly because of his words. And now I'm like his favorite niece because of everything I'm doing.
It almost would seem like it was an intentional provocation.
Right.
A challenge to you.
Yeah. It could have been. He's never told me it was, but it could have been. But for somebody like me, I was like, oh, that's a challenge and I'm going to prove him wrong. But I think that, I've always, been ambitious. I've always been ambitious, no matter how, where the stakes were stacked against me, as a teen mom. I've been in an abusive relationship. I've had all these setbacks of having to work because I was a single mom for a long time and not having the opportunity to go back to school. I've invested in myself to make sure that I was always learning something. And I would always I taught myself how to write grants, because I started in the nonprofit world. And I taught myself, I would watch executives, I would watch the bosses, I'd watch the CEO and figure them out. I'd really always pay attention to the people who were the boss. Who's the boss? And that's who I would watch. And I would always admire them and I'd watch them. I remember going to restaurants, going to stores, and I wanted to know who owned that place. Like I always was intrigued by that. So always learning about that and how people, started their own businesses. And I always admired people who started from nothing and built it to something great. Also, just going to school at a later time in my life and just graduating college in 2013.
Oh, really
That's,
recently.
yeah, but I've always worked my way up in organizations and always was at a director level or higher in organizations because I was so ambitious and people had no idea I didn't have my degree. And once people figured it out, that's when I said, oh, I have to go get it. I have to go get it now because they know and I have to go get it. So I did, just having that piece of paper and, I've learned some things, but I needed that, to even take it to a whole nother level. But also just recently and having a coach, people coach me, and even the most ambitious person and the most driven and hardworking person needs somebody to help them identify and bring out the best in them and to give another perspective when you're trying to grow something. And the only way that I've been able to get to the point where I'm at, where I'm making impact across the country, whether it's my book, whether it's podcasts, whether it's the Huffington Post, just the visibility that I've been able to get is the only reason I've been able to get there is because of coaching and support I've had from, people and where I've invested into myself.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I've been able to get to where I've been able to get to and make a whole lot of sacrifices at the same time.
I want to move into the last guidepost, C, which stands for connected. And it's about being in community on your journey. Where are you just mentioned having a coach as part of your community and, family, even in times when your uncle, was saying he didn't believe in you, the positive impact that had in you, wanting to prove him wrong. Where are some of the other places that you have found connections that you really lean on?
I would say my mentors. I have some great mentors within the community that have gotten me here, that have believed in me, that I've watched. Some are former Black Panthers, some are political activists, the labor activists, judges, all different perspectives. I have a mentor that's a Republican, but he's very progressive Republican. But it's so important to me to have these different perspectives and to see them. And that's kind of what's helped me to get where I am today, is having these people I could bounce things off of and support me.
And I have this sense about you that you're very proactive in building connections and seeking out those mentors. For people that are newer to this path or that you're going to be inspiring through your book, what words of wisdom would you offer about how to find those mentors and develop relationships with them?
I say just ask. Just reach out. And the only thing they can do is say no. And it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to kill you if they say no. It's okay. Most of them are very busy, I'm sure. And you have to kind of be realistic as well, right? You're not going to reach out to Oprah and ask her to be your mentor because you already know kind of what that answer is going to be. But you never know. You never know. She might never be asked, and you're the only person that asked her, and she was like, "Yeah, come hang out with me," and she send you a flight. You never know.
Right.
You never know.
That happened for someone.
See, it's happened. So to me, that's what I'm saying. You just never know. So reach out to somebody that you admire, somebody that you follow, and somebody that you see and inspires you. Reach out to them. And even if it's a one conversation, say, can I get on Zoom with you for 30 minutes and just talk to you and, ask you a few questions?
Yeah.
Can I interview you? Or can I, there's always these ways to leverage these opportunities. But to me, I've always said, just ask. You never know what they're going to say.
Yeah.
You never know what they're going to say. Just reach out and ask and take that opportunity, be proactive in asking, because they're not going to come to you. Some might, if you stand out, some people might, a lot of my mentors actually, wanting to mentor me, and they kind of initiated it. And you will, if you stick out and you're somebody that they see as somebody's potential and they have the eye and know that somebody has to come behind them eventually, because they're not going to be here forever. They're going to identify you and prepare you and mold you. But you have to stand out of the crowd in order for them to do that. What are you doing? So it's a lot of your work for you to stand out and say, people are going to pay attention to that and say, hey, let's go have coffee or let's meet up for lunch And before you know it, you're not going to realize it, but they're your mentor.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time together, which did go so fast. This is the part of the conversation where you have the opportunity to give me a challenge and anyone else who's listening that wants to say yes. And it could come from any of the themes that we've just discussed.
Well, I'm going to stick to what I always stick to and a call to action, and that is to everybody on here. You have the opportunity to join a school board. You have the opportunity to start a neighborhood association within your city council. You have the opportunity to run for any position that you want to run for political office. We have the opportunity to sit at the table instead of being in the background and hoping the people, the decision-making people, are going to make the right decisions for us. So you have the power to do that. Also, you have the power, and focusing on the audience that you have, Julie, you have the power to influence the other maybe races outside of your own community. You have the power and give money. You have the power to walk precincts for people of color, maybe people that don't have the funding and support to get behind them. You have that. So find out where you can use your influence, use your resources to help other communities get the people they need elected into these offices within maybe communities that need the help the most.
Yeah. So it's interesting because yesterday, my son Jacob, who's 5, and I walked in our neighborhood for 2 candidates that, one, somebody who I know personally, who's
Mm-hmm.
currently our school board president. She's the only woman running for city council in
Mm-hmm.
my city.
Mm-hmm.
And then another woman who is, one of the few women of color who's
Mm-hmm.
running for school board. And, I'm almost 46 and I have never done precinct walking in my whole life.
Yeah.
And then here was my 5-year-old who was, busy passing out the materials. And, I was really explaining to him what we were doing and why it was important.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, I've been on the path to more activism, but I
Mm-hmm.
really hear you and accept the challenge about,
Right.
leaning into more ways to be active and to use
Mm-hmm.
my influence and my privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes, ma'am.
I'm thinking too about like sitting at tables because I have been a person that I like to get involved in the ways that feed me, but the idea of being in, at a table, an official table in that way has not been
Mm-hmm.
something that's been interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you're inspiring me to at least get curious, to find
Right.
out, what are the commissions in my own city
Mm-hmm.
that where I maybe can make a difference
Mm-hmm.
and would also enjoy
Mm-hmm.
being part of something like that.
Right.
So I will commit to Jake and I are going to do some more precinct walking this afternoon. So I say
Awesome.
yes to that immediately. And then I'm going to commit to getting curious and starting to have some conversation about where there's some places in my local community where there's need, where my background and experience and commitment to equity could really make a difference.
Great. That makes me happy.
Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
so the very last thing that we do is close with acknowledgments. And this is a chance for each of us to name what our biggest takeaways are. And I'll start.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I said before we pressed record that I really wanted to bring some curiosity to this conversation because I do know you. I knew that I would be able to go deeper. And I feel like everything I know about you just came into sharper focus. And
Mm-hmm.
I've learned, some of the depth and the past that has influenced where you are now. I'm so inspired by your belief in yourself, by your tenacity and your joy and passion around using your voice and speaking out for women and bringing people to the table. And I think you have a really amazing analysis of power and leadership
Mm-hmm.
and like an insatiable, speaking of curiosity for it. So I loved hearing about how, you've been paying attention to these things. And when you were working, you were watching who are the owners, who are the leaders, what can you learn from them,
Mm-hmm.
ways in which you've sought out mentors and invested in yourself and your dreams, even when you've had hardships like becoming pregnant as a teenager. So I just have really well-rounded picture of you and just even more admiration for your path and all the impact that you're having.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. And I think with me, what a reflection that I have about this conversation is that, it just figuring out as we're going, and really understanding and really sit with me that who your audience is and how important this conversation is to have and who I'm speaking to right now, and framing it as we're going on who I'm speaking to and how important that is. Because I preach to mostly people of color, and that's not my audience, but a unique perspective and a unique direction that I'm speaking to today is majority, like you said, would be white women that are your audience, this group. And I'm just grateful that you offer the opportunity to do that. And it's something that you're doing every day and that I'm a part of it, that I'm helping with this journey for all the women that are interested in doing something and doing more, but really don't know, that I have a little piece in hopefully inspiring them to take action and do something different.
Well, you definitely inspired me today, and I'll share some photos with you after our neighborhood walking this afternoon.
Great.
And I look forward to, voting tomorrow and encouraging other people to do the same.
Yes, ma'am.
Have a great afternoon, Chandra.
Okay, you too, Julie. Take care.
Thank you so much for coming along with me on this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something that will help you live your epic life. If you'd like to get show notes and learn more about how to join the Mother's Quest community, visit mothersquest.com. And while you're there, I would love it if you would follow the prompts to subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and help us to spread the word. I want to end with some words to help light the way on your quest. Seize the day, love your people, honor your gifts. Until next time.